Husband helped an injured girl get to hospital. 6 months later, while I'm pregnant, I found her messages getting creepier each day when he finally tried to distance himself. I'll start by saying I'm generally a secure person, and I've never felt like I had issues around this until I read a message sent to my husband yesterday. Now I'm spiraling. Sorry, this may be long. Let me provide some backstory. My husband does downhill biking, something he's been passionate about since he was very young. He's very experienced and knows his stuff. He usually rides with the same group of guys, but they mostly stick to weekends. Fortunately, his job allows him to ride during the week as well. If he's out riding solo on weekdays and the dogs are free, he'll take them with him. They love it. Around 6 months ago, he was out in the morning with the dogs and ended up coming home earlier than usual. While he was out, he found a girl who had fallen and badly injured her arm, specifically her wrist. As you can imagine, he's done the same many times, so he knew exactly what to do and where to take her for quicker medical care. He got her to the car park, packed up the dogs and bikes, and took her to the GP, who referred her to the hospital. He came home, and everything seemed fine. About a week later, one of his biking friends sent him a screenshot of a post in a Facebook group dedicated to people who build and maintain bike trails. The post read something like, "I'm looking for someone named, husband's name, who helped me last week when I fell and took me to the hospital." He drove a truck with 3 dogs and then listed their names. She had posted in several groups before being linked to the Trail Builders group, which my husband is part of. Since my husband isn't on social media, he said he could send her his number. She texted him to confirm she had the right person, and he replied, saying he was glad she was feeling better and was happy to help. She offered him money or to take him for lunch, both of which he declined, simply saying again that he was happy to help. They started texting occasionally, mostly just, "Hey, how are you?" and "Hope you're well," etc. But eventually, the texts became more frequent. She suggested they go riding together. To be clear, without tooting his horn, my husband is very good at biking. He used to ride competitively when he was younger, as do many of the guys he rides with. They're quite well known at the bike park. Most people tend to move aside when they hear them coming. My husband didn't want to offend her, so he tried to decline her offer in a way that didn't make her feel bad. But there's a section of the trail that's made up of big jumps, and he knew she wouldn't be able to keep up with them. He said, "Maybe next time when I'm on those, I'll give you a shout, and we can meet up then." Eventually, that happened. He gave her a few tips, which led to her texting him more frequently about biking and asking for him to coach her. This went on for the next couple of months. It seemed like a budding friendship, and I never once had concerns about it. Then, yesterday, Monday, he went out with the dogs and bumped into her. He said they spoke for a while, and then went for a cycle with the dogs to wind down before heading home. When he got home, she started texting him. I was using the iPad, so I could see the messages coming through. To clarify, he's not hiding the text from me. He openly leaves his phone around without a passcode, lets our daughter play on it, and has never been secretive about it. He knows the iPad and laptop are linked to his phone, and anyone using them can see the messages. He's never given me cause for concern, until now. I'm starting to get suspicious about her intentions. Anyway, we have 3 working gun dogs used regularly in the fields. While they may seem like they're running wild down these trails, they are extremely well trained and highly tuned into whatever my husband is doing, which becomes more evident when they're not on the trails and are following his every move. The text soon shifted to talk about the dogs. Then one text ended with her saying something like a slave looking to please their master. Admittedly, I don't care for emojis or the texting culture nowadays. I don't even know what that face means, but something about that comment made me feel uncomfortable, and I feel like there's an underlying tone to it. My husband replied, but he seemed to ignore that specific comment. Looking back on our communication, a few red flags have started to appear. 1. She always initiates contact. 2. If she doesn't get a reply, she keeps sending messages until she does. 3. Not once has she ever referenced or acknowledged the fact that my husband is married or has a family. Even when he mentioned being away for my birthday or going to our daughter's dance show, she would change the subject, as if pretending we don't exist or closing down any mention of us. 4. She often makes excuses for them to meet up one-on-one. There are probably other things, but I don't want to go through every message and feed into it more than I already have, in case I'm overthinking things. But am I crazy for thinking there might be something going on here? I don't want to bring it up with my husband in case I'm just being paranoid. I don't want to seem like the overprotective wife. But it just isn't sitting right with me, especially since I'm pregnant and hormonal. Should I say something? Or just monitor the situation a bit more closely? Or is this just the effect of being a pregnant woman whose husband seems to be aging like fine wine, while any woman he meets in his hobby comments on how great he looks? Someone else replied, I'm kind of like your husband. I help people in a different way, but there are a lot of lonely and awkward people who just keep messaging once they have your contact info, both men and women. I think you've handled this with grace, but it's totally reasonable for you to talk to your husband and just tell him that this girl is being pretty pushy. He's not doing anything wrong, but I'd appreciate it if he'd shut her down. He should tell her that he doesn't have the time to be a coach and that his writing time is focused. She sounds a little starstruck and needy. I replied, I just don't want to be the pregnant wife who's demanding my husband block women just because I'm making things up in my head. Another commenter said, he ran into her while walking the dogs. Was that a plan meeting? Does she live near you? I answered, no. He was at the bike park with the dogs when she spotted them and called one over. Honestly, I don't know where she lives. I know very little about her, other than that she's much younger than me. Someone else replied, totally not on topic, but what are gun dogs? Sounds like your husband is just being nice, but that girl is being scandalous. Sometimes men don't pick up on this stuff, so I talked to him about how you both should handle this disrespectful woman. I replied, gun dogs are used for flushing and retrieving during hunting. We use them regularly in the field. I've had enough comments to feel confident that I'm not being dramatic, so we're going to talk about it once our daughter is in bed tonight and go from there. Update asterisk it escalated quickly. My last post got way more responses than I expected, and while I wasn't planning to post an update, I feel like I owe it to all the people telling me to trust my gut. For those asking why my husband hadn't been more direct with her, here's a brief explanation. He always tries to keep the peace. I didn't mention how well-known he is in our town. He comes from a well-known family here, and he was a downhill rider in the UCI, so he's featured in various channels. People come specifically for the bike trails, and wherever he goes, there's usually a handful of people who recognize him and want to say hello. It's a small town, and like anywhere, people don't want to leave any interaction on a bad note. After our daughter went to bed, I spoke with my husband about my concerns. He agreed that she was being inappropriate, and he hadn't done or said anything to suggest he was okay with it. He had hoped that by ignoring it, she would get the hint and leave him alone. But he admitted that he probably should have said something sooner. After reading all the comments, there were loads of amazing suggestions for how he could have shut her down early. In hindsight, those would have been a great way to stop her in her tracks, but he didn't want to ruffle feathers. So we decided to go with, we're getting ready for the baby and have lots to prepare, so we don't have time or energy for bike meetups. He will be unavailable to her for the foreseeable future. He typed it up and handed it to me for approval, and I hit send. A few minutes later, his phone pinged. He was in the living room, and I was in the kitchen. When I saw his face, I could tell something was wrong. I walked over, and he handed me his phone. Her response astounded me. She replied, okay, do you think we could meet up quickly tomorrow? My heart sank. I knew exactly what that meant. I burst into tears, convinced this was the beginning of my world falling apart. My husband tried to calm me down and asked what I wanted him to do. Block her immediately or ask what she wanted to meet about. For some reason, I wanted to know more, so he asked her. She replied that she had developed feelings for him, which had turned into fantasies. She said he could do whatever he wanted with her, and I didn't have to know about it, calling it our thing. It was more graphic than I'm willing to write here. At that point, I completely lost it. I got angry, started crying uncontrollably, and felt like I was vibrating with rage. I barely slept, and today I feel awful. I've contacted friends who run the Facebook group she joined and asked them to remove her and ensure she can't join again. My husband says it's sorted and that I don't need to worry about her anymore. I haven't seen the text he sent, and it's there on the iPad, but I can't bring myself to open the messages after everything I've seen. It's just not fair.